Hello, and you're welcome to Global Business Insights, where from a global perspective we discuss issues in the fascinating places where finance, culture, business converge. Mercedes-Benz profits sank 54% year on year in the third quarter. The car maker faces a combination of growing competition and weak demand for its vehicles. Yesterday, the flash US S&P Global October Composite PMI, that's Purchasing Managers Index, edged higher to 54.3 after a 54.0 final print in September. Manufacturing activity improved to 47.8 from 47.3 in September, beating the anticipated 47.5. The services index at 55.3 was up from 55.2 in the previous month and above the 55 forecast. Still, in the US, durable goods orders fell to $2.2 billion or 0.8% to $284.8 billion in September, also slightly higher than the market expectation for a decline of 1%. More data, this time Germany, where the headline IFO Business Climate Index rebounded to 86.5 in October from 85.4 in September, and also the estimated 85.6 print. Crude oil prices seen an uptick despite headlines that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken might be able to get both Israel and Iran at the table for ceasefire talks. The Biden administration is stepping up efforts to broker a ceasefire deal ahead of the U.S. presidential elections on November 5. Brent crude over $75 a barrel. Nigeria has officially joined BRICS as a partner country alongside 12 other countries, further strengthening its economic ties with the bloc. BRICS 2024, in its Kazan declaration, sees the crucial role to improve the international monetary and financial system with a view to making it more responsive to the needs of all countries. Vladimir Putin has closed the summit by praising the group's role as a counterweight to what he described as the West's perverse methods. Attendance of more than 36 leaders, including United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, showed Mr. Putin may be successfully defying Western attempts to isolate him. Meanwhile, critics insist BRICS is a rogue assembly focused on a cross-border currency transfer mechanism outside of SWIFT to evade policing and sanctions by the US. Russia has already set out proposals for a unified depository and clearance system for BRICS countries. All this as the IMF agrees that economic growth is shifting to the BRICS bloc. Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu approved implementation of actions to reinvigorate the administration's capacity for optimal efficiency. The actions include merging some ministries, renaming others, fresh ministerial appointments, and some removed. Still on Nigeria, the National Bureau of Statistics yesterday said it will rebase Nigeria's gross domestic product and consumer price index in November to ensure the data accurately reflects current realities. The polls are not conclusive, both sides anxious, and no one can say with much certainty who will be in the White House after next month's presidential election. What is clearer is the nervousness around the possibility of a Trump presidency. Senior EU officials are reported to be holding daily meetings to outline where and how a Trump presidency could impact the bloc and how to position. The three main areas being discussed include, according to the reports, one, withstanding a barrage of trade tariffs; second, response to a possible end of US aid to Ukraine; and third, maintaining sanctions against Russia if Washington decides to lift restrictions. Others are of the view that Trump may be more pragmatic, less predictable on global matters, and his focus will be on domestic issues such as immigration, lowering taxation, and easing curbs on fossil fuels. A win for Kamala implies more of the status quo upheld. Both will move in a populist direction. Harris going after corporates price gouging and Trump raising tariffs to avert what he has described as dumping. Today, a federal judge blocked Virginia from purging its voter rolls of alleged non-citizens and ordered the state to reinstate more than 1,600 people who had already been bounced from the voter list. A contested process is almost inevitable and courts will be busy, which could also make governance difficult depending on the power map that emerges in Congress. Still, market sentiment so far has not been materially affected by the political transition. Having involved in a few complex strategic reorganizations, and indeed it can be an opportunity to better support the vision and to fix gaps in aligning leadership to get a better fit and improve chances of achieving the strategic objectives of an organization. The first important thing, however, to state is that while the quality of talent definitely matters, talent is often overrated. Having the right institutional framework like decision processes for success can often be far more important. Still, building institutions and fixing systems, they don't make headlines and they can entail more complex effort, often with higher upfront costs. The longer lasting impact of improved institutions tends to be felt decades after improved structures have stabilized. Also, by far the worst on the team could be the more visible leader caught in an activity trap who misreads a frenzy of poorly conceived initiatives for progress. The truth is, more problems are created as fewer are solved, and the tireless change champion, not focused on the right outcome metrics, can be easily self-deceived to misread laborious efforts as evidence of progress. Effective change leaders need to be always asking, so what, or what happens if we don't do this? In many cases, shutting down some initiatives help focus. Also, issues have to be prioritized and urgency has to be reflected in organizational design. For the Nigerian government, for example, improving innovation and productivity, electricity supply, improving infrastructure, improving security, reducing inflation and creating jobs have so much more value in terms of importance than, say, sports development, tourism, or livestock development. In a corporate setting, a job evaluation will guide how to reward jobs. In the public sector, this can be more complicated, and rewards often do not reflect contribution, skill, and urgency of tasks. The result is difficulty in attracting the right talent and poor motivation to move faster. Culture issues are also often underappreciated. A healthy culture of performance does not emerge by default. Instead, cronyism, obvious waste and extravagance, cult-like opacity, weak direction, and other suboptimal types tend to thrive when you don't have deliberate tools like peer reviews, strategy sessions, balanced scorecards with the right blend of quick wins and longer-term goals, and so on. And where you don't have these types of assessments like independent performance assessments, as well as the right lateral mechanisms to encourage cross-functional cooperation and the needed teamwork, you will tend to have a suboptimal organization. You also want to spot and address favoritism, subjectivity, misogyny, gender imbalance, toxic patterns, and abuse of power long before they become problematic. Embedding new tools, usually digital aids, can also help to improve productivity and the decision making. The bane of most government type bodies is the slow pace of work. Bureaucracy, mislabeled as an army filling offices, buildings, and floors, tends to be the norm. A well-executed re-engineering of core processes makes most functions not just redundant, but it makes better use of automation, creates greater customer experience, and reduces the cost of governance while adding value in terms of things like staff morale, citizens' well-being, and overall prosperity. In short, improving organizational performance usually happens when you have the right tools and components and continually asking the right questions, getting the answers to root causes of problems. When the right mechanisms are absent, outcomes inevitably suffer, the wrong people are rewarded, and worse, suboptimal behavior is reinforced and applauded. Senior business analyst Lekon Shote speaks to the latest reorganization of ministers by the President of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
The expected changes in the cabinet of President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria finally came, though observers will be keenly looking to see if it will lead to significant changes in performance of his government. Just as yet others speculate that there will still be more appointments, redeployments, and sackings. While 5 ministers were asked to go, 7 others were appointed. The Ministry of Sports was replaced with a sports commission. One ministry was renamed and expanded, while 2 others were merged. 2 of the 10 ministers of state that were redeployed became full ministers, while their colleagues who remained ministers of state may not make much significant impacts in their new ministries unless their new bosses give them the opportunity. Many agree that the performance of the 5 ministers that were relieved of their posts was lackluster. Also, observers think that many of those who are still retained in the cabinet are no better than those who are asked to go. They too should have been replaced. While one must appreciate that the changes that were made were based on some kind of performance appraisal, there's no doubt that President Bola Tinubu still has more rejigging to do in order to enhance the performance of his cabinet.
European stocks were slightly lower, rounding off a largely negative week for global stocks as third quarter earnings results continue to come in. Technology stocks propelled the Nasdaq Composite to a new high on Friday for the first. Technology stocks propelled the Nasdaq Composite to a new high for the first time since July in a sharp turnaround, while we can still see Wall Street stocks mostly higher after the S&P 500 ended a 3-day negative streak. Investors continue to look to end the volatile week on a positive note. Well, that's it from me on Global Business Insights. This is Bode Oshosami. Thanks for sharing and for following or subscribing on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube and X. Again, thank you so very much for watching.